So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our evening sutra lecture on the Infinite Life Sutra. We'll begin with our Dharma Request. So I invite everyone to please put your palms together as we invite the Triple Jewel to the Dharma Hall, but also maybe wherever you are, of course, into our hearts. So if you can find the text in the chat box. So 欢迎大家，我们现在请法。请三宝怎么说？三宝来到场，到我们心中。好。Hey Paul, anytime you're ready.
Okay, Dharma Master. Will the Sangha with great virtue out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma will to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and embers and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo Sadanto Suchetoye Alahati Samya Sambuddhoche.
Namo Sadanto Suchetoye Alahati Samya Sambuddhoche.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。
Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Master, and all good and wise friends online, Amitofo, welcome to our evening sutra lecture. And so we're brought to you via many pieces of technology, through YouTube, through Zoom, through some type of cell phone service, and somehow it all works so that we can come and study the Dharma together. 所以诸佛菩萨、上人、法师、各位善知识，阿弥陀佛。今天我们很快乐可以跟大家一起来研究无量寿经。我们有很多怎么说高科技的工具来帮助我们，可以来一起学习佛法。我们先开始来念佛，但是我需要 but because there's so much technology, I need to make sure that they're all set properly. I seem to have an echo here. Okay, I think that gets rid of the echo. Oh, sorry. Also, we have a Vietnamese translation. I believe that you can find. Let me see if I can find the link here on the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese, if you want to go on Zoom, people can put it in the chat box, but it's meeting ID 857-8292-5484, and the passcode's 484848. So maybe somebody can put that in. I don't know where. We somehow have an echo here. Sorry, just give me one moment here. Is there a way to lower the volume? Okay, I'm not sure how to do that, but it's okay. Okay, so let's recite the Buddha's name together. Namo Amito Oboai 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 Namo Amito 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 Amito如果你可以先开始，我帮有个人要一个东西。你先开始，我那个越南的翻译我需要给人。You can start first,
Okay.
and I will help somebody with a Vietnamese. Okay, I'll put the Vietnamese link on the chat box here.
Yeah. OK， 好， 诸佛菩萨、仙公上人以及在座的法师，还有线上的佛友，大家阿弥陀佛。
So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good and wise friends online, Amitofo.
今天是3月11号。
Today is March 10th.
Yeah， 我们在伯克利这边来继续来研究阿弥陀佛48大愿的第43愿，第43愿。
We're going to study the vow number 43 today.
那我们之前我们先来大家一起来念这个经文一下，这样子。
Let's read the vow together.
Yeah， 好，我们一样的来合掌来念经文。
Let's put our palms together as we read it.
好，在44页中文
Page 44，
然后45页是英文。43，受我得佛，他方国土诸菩萨众闻我名日，寿终之后，生尊贵家。若不尔者，不取正觉。好，英文。
Page 45, number 43. When I become a Buddha, if the Bodhisattvas in other lands, upon hearing my name, are not born into noble families after their lives end, I will not realize perfect awakening.
这个43大愿呢，他就是说他成佛的时候，其他的国度的这个修菩萨众的这一些人们呢，他听到这个阿弥陀佛名号，然后这个因为他继续修行这个菩萨道，然后他们命中之后，也一定可以出生在尊贵之家。假如不是这样子的话，他就不成佛。
So here Amitabha Buddha is making a vow that Bodhisattvas in other lands, after hearing their name, when they die, if they don't get reborn into noble families, then he will not realize Buddhahood.
所以这个愿呢，我们可以说叫做闻名生处尊贵愿，就是说他闻到佛名，他会然后修菩萨道，然后就以后往生的话，他生在这个尊贵的地方的一个愿，这个是对他方国土所发的这个果报的愿。
So this is basically saying that when you hear the name of Amitabha Buddha, you can be reborn in a noble family. I think somebody's asking for a Vietnamese link for the translation. I just put it in the chat box. I think you should be able to see it. It's right above. There's a Zoom link. You have to follow that one.
因为这个阿弥陀佛他发这个愿呢，因为我们依照阿弥陀经里面知道他是有无量光、无量寿，所以他有无量的功德所成，所以他方世界的菩萨，只要你称这个名字呢，这个种这个因呢，也就是可以夺这个积福德的这个果，所以必定会生这个尊贵之家。
So Amitabha Buddha, sorry, just helping with this person's link here. I don't know if somebody can help put the link in the chat box. But 他们有越南的翻译。
越南翻不是那个吗？
应该有。
果瑞啊。
Okay, let me try one more time here. If you cannot open it, I just put the link in the chat box. We don't have tech support here, so. Okay, so I put the link again for people to try to to go to. Okay. Vietnamese link, Zoom link didn't show up on YouTube. Oh, I guess it has to. Interesting. Okay, well, I think the code, I can read the code out for people again. It's 857-8292-5484, and the passcode is 484848. So 3 4/8. So maybe somebody can just type in those numbers. So it's meeting code for Zoom is 857-8292-5484, passcode 484848. Okay. So Jingfo is saying that how Amitabha Buddha's name means limitless light and limitless life. And by reciting and hearing his name, one can be born into noble families.
所以这个珍贵之家呢，像国王啊、大臣啊，然后这个转轮王啊、转轮圣王啊，或者是第四的梵王、帝释啊，这些都是算比珍贵。当然，像娑婆世界也都是有能够富贵之家，这个都是包括。
So there's kings, officials, wheel turning sage kings, the Lord Brahma, who's another heavenly god, Chakra. These are all, you could say, noble families. You know, the kind of families who have authority and kind of, you could say, influence.
所以其实要讲最尊贵的，就是你看佛他有两足尊，所以这个尊啊，就是说福慧两足尊，所以这个佛他是算最尊贵的。然后那你修菩萨道的，其他的这个菩萨修行者呢，他没有去极乐世界，然后在他们的世界来修菩萨道，那最后也都是可以成佛，所以这个就是可以到达这个最尊贵的之处来最后的这个往生的地方。
But truly, what is the most noble, what is the most, you could say, honored, is the Buddha. The Buddha is considered the doubly perfected one, perfect in blessings and wisdom. He is truly the most honored. And bodhisattvas who cultivate, and here these are bodhisattvas not in the Pure Land, but in other worlds, they can hear the Buddha's name and then cultivate to become Buddhas, to then become the most honored, to be born, you could say, in the most honored family.
所以这个像这个生这个33天的第四第四就是梵王第四 Chakra， 然后这个这个在那个法纪经里面呢，佛陀也有提到这个往生为第四的这个他的这个故事，今天我们也来讲出来。
So Lord Chakra, who is the god in the 33 heavens, in Tramshimsha heaven, I believe, and there's a story in the Dhammapada about how the current Lord Chakra was reborn in that heaven.
这个是在法纪经第2篇里面的一个，他是讲这个Machia 为什么他会往生到成为第四这个一个故事。他是说有一天呢，离车国 这个是一组的这个国民，的一个王子叫做摩吼利王子呢，他来听这个佛陀讲解这个他第四所问经，就是 Chakra 他所问的这个一部经典。
So this particular one comes from Dhammapada number 2, and it talks about how Machia becomes Lord Chakra. So the story begins that one day in the country Licha, there was a king named Mohali who was explained to by the Buddha about how Lord Chakra became Lord Chakra.
佛陀他来解释叙述，让这个王子他以为王子以为这个佛陀他一定见过这个第四，就是 Chakra 为了要确认呢，他就问佛陀说问了佛陀，佛陀就跟他答复，他说摩利王子啊，我确认而且认识这个第四的，也知道他为什么成为这个第四。
So this king thought that the Buddha must have met Lord Chakra before, and so he wanted to ask the Buddha about that. So after he asked the Buddha about Lord Chakra, the Buddha replied, King Moli, yes, I actually know Lord Chakra quite well, and I know about his history, his background, on how he became Lord Chakra.
那这个佛陀告诉这个摩诃利王子，他说，身为诸天天王的这个第四的某一前世呢，他是摩卡拉村的一位村民，他的名字叫做Machia，这应该是Machia的年轻人，他是算一个年轻的人，他跟32位同伴呢，一起来做这个社会公益的活动，像这个做来修庙啊、补路啊，还有公共的这个房子啊这些，所以他一生呢，并有7项的这个他所行的这个义务方面。
7项啊？
有7项。
7项什么意思？
有七种啊，7种的义务，就是他做过的的事情。Yeah.
7 things. So then the Buddha explained. So Lord Chakra was in a previous life was a person named Machia, who was a young person who gathered 32 friends to do good deeds. They would fix temples, bridges, help with public works, build houses and residences for those who did not have anything. So he spent a lot of time serving, and so he has 7 aspects to his service.
Yeah, 有的，并且也包括这个7项。哪7项呢？第一个要奉养父母，就是要孝顺父母。第二个要尊敬师长，尊敬长者。
So what are the 7 things that one needs to focus on? The first is filiality towards parents. And second is to be respectful to our elders and teachers.
第3个就是要能够说话言语要柔顺。第4个不要背后说人家的闲话。
So number 3 is our speech is harmonious and I'll say maybe kind. Number 4 is we don't talk about other people's, we don't gossip about other people.
Yeah. 第5个就是说对大家要慷慨大方，然后不贪怨，就是说你不贪心。
So number 5 is you're generous, you're not greedy and stingy.
第6个就是要实话实说，你老实说，把事情说出来这样子。
Number 6 is you're truthful and honest.
第7个就是不要动气，就是不要生气，不要发脾气。
Number 7 is not getting angry.
所以这个马且在他一生中呢，都记住了这个无私的善业，还有正确的德行，所以他往生为第4。
So this Machia was fulfilled all 7 of these aspects, so he was able to be born as Lord Chakra.
其实我们仙公上人他也讲过这个33天第4的这个由来呢，他在地藏经他一开始的时候他也有讲这个故事，我们也来跟他来讲述仙公上人的开始。
So Master Hua also explained about the past lives of Lord Chakra. So he gave an explanation in the Earth Store Sutra.
然后他说，在这个迦摄佛的时候，不是大迦摄，迦摄佛的时候呢，有一位天竺，她是一个女人，所以你们就是说这个女人呢，她发心，她为这个迦摄佛来造一个塔庙。
So the story begins that there was during the time of the Buddha, Kashyapa, there was a woman. 这个是一个 queen 啊，这个是国王。
不是 queen， 不是，
就是女的，
一个女的。
A woman who made a vow to build a temple for Kashyapa Buddha.
那这个因为他看到这个庙里面有一尊佛，这个庙已经没有屋顶了，也没有天花板了。所以这个而且这一尊佛的这个贴金也都被雨水冲下来，所以他觉得这样子非常难过，所以他像这样子，他就发心要把这个庙把它做好。
So she saw that in the temple, an old temple, that there was the roof was leaking or was kind of mostly gone. There was a Buddha image inside, but it was kind of deteriorating. The gold had all been washed off. It wasn't in good condition. So she made a vow to restore the monastery and the image.
但是这个他呢，当时他没有钱，所以他就找了其他的朋友，或者是找他的亲戚。说我们要来做一件慈善事业，把这个庙修好。
So she however, she did not have any money. So she went to her family and friends and said, how about we work together to fix up this monastery?
所以他这样子一找呢，就刚好就找了33个人，他就是其中一个发起人。所以另外就是有32个人。
So she found 32 other people. With her, it would be a total of 33.
这个仙公上人讲，这个32个大约也都是女人，但是这个事情呢，在历史上是不可以，已经考察不出来了，这个太久了。
So the Buddha, then Master Hua says, well, these 33 were all women. She got all of her women, family, and friends to help out with this project. And Master Hua says, you can't probably do research and find out about this because this was too long ago.
因为这个33个女人把这个庙造好了以后，又造了一个宝塔，所以这样子就是说，大家拿一点钱出来，就大家来共同把力量来把这个庙造好了。
So after they fixed the temple, they also built a jeweled stupa. So they all donated what they could to make the temple and stupa possible.
所以这个33个人的生命结束之后呢，都升到天上去了。升到天上去了，每一个人有1层天，所以这个33个人呢，就有33天。
So they were after they passed away, they were reborn in the heavens, in the heaven of Tramshimsha. And so Tramshimsha has 33 heavens, and so each one of them had their own heaven.
所以这样子他总共32个人，就33天。那这个33天的中间呢，就是忉利天天竺，这个就是第4。
So I believe how the Tramshimsha heaven is arranged is there's one heaven in the middle, and there's 8 heavens on all the 4 sides, and so it makes total of 33, right? So 8 times 4, 32 plus 1, 33. And the heaven in the middle is the one where Lord Chakra resides, and that's where this woman who helped set up, repair the temple, she was the center.
所以这个就是忉利天的由来。由于这个33个人的他这个做善业的业报呢，所以他们的能够到天上去，那里都是业力善的业力所感。
So this is how they got reborn into the Lord Chakra's heaven. This came from their wholesome karma. 我讲故事关于这个。
好，你要讲。
I was thinking when Jing Forsher mentioned about doing good works. I've been involved with service space recently because of the 4 Fearless Hearts pod, talking about the 4 boundless hearts. And we get a chance to hear lots of stories. And they're stories of service. And it's really striking to me how selfless people really are. And so what Jing Forsher talked about, this young person named Machia who goes and fixes bridges and helps people out and does good. I'm just really struck by how in our society, what do we focus on oftentimes here in America is material success, right? Making a lot of money, having high status, a lot of things that we emphasize, but when we really look at it from a perspective of principle, it doesn't really lead to a lasting happiness. Pretty much in terms of principle, it says we need to make enough to live and to support those we care about and that we are responsible for. But past that, making more money isn't that useful unless we have a very generous heart so that we can share it with other people. And so I'm struck by there's people who make it their life to serve. So there's one story that I just heard where 2 young girls who were in service space, they decided to go on a pilgrimage, I think 2,800 kilometers, which is like 1,000 plus miles, right across India. And took very little, and off they went. And one day they got to a place where they met a kind of man who offered them some tea. Very simple person. He's just out in nowhere. He just happened to be next to the road, and he had a little hut. And the path that they were walking on was a kind of well-known, established kind of pilgrimage path that many people have gone on. But the path isn't that easy to travel. You know, there's often going through forests and different places. It's easy to get lost. But they would see these kind of bright signs kind of posted on trees saying this way or go that way. And so that became a kind of a way that they could guide themselves to get to each place safely. So anyway, so they're sitting with this man who's offering them some kind of black tea. And they talk a little bit. Say, we're really grateful for the person who was making all of these signs. I wonder who's making it. And in the conversation, they found out this is this guy. There's a random guy on the side of the road, and he says that he's actually making the signs. He has a picture of the sign that he's making. And they're amazed. It's, wow, you spend your time just making these signs? It's, yeah, for like something like 8 months of the year, he just puts up the signs, all across the trails, maintains them. And the rest of the time when there's rain, he actually makes the signs. And he sets out water. So for the pilgrims, a lot of the places don't have water, when they're walking. And these people are traveling oftentimes without money. So what he does is he actually gets kettles of water. He fills it up with good water, and then he puts it along the path so that people can fill in their water bottles or have water on their journey. Completely anonymous, And so they look at him and they say, wow, then how do you make a living? How do you survive? You're just out here, by yourself. So people, I get by, I help out, I get supported. And says, like, by who? There's no one else here. They're looking in this area and it's kind of out in the wilderness. But they say their goodbyes and off they go. And they had a picture of the person. It was interesting to see this kind of skinny Indian man. Looks very normal. Nothing special about him. But I was just struck. His life's work is essentially supporting pilgrims on their spiritual journeys. Putting up signs to help them along. Putting out water for them to drink. And it's like, gosh, from a perspective of America, it's like, gosh, your life is a complete failure, Do something productive with your life would be kind of like a criticism, right? But from a spiritual lens, and Jing Foshu was just sharing some of these stories, that it's in these simple acts of generosity, of kind of selflessness, that true goodness is created. And we often miss that. We often miss the kind of potential that we all have in our hearts, going after what society tells us is success. So here we're kind of refocusing here. Jing Foshu is kind of giving us some very good markers for how do we really cultivate goodness. And I think that list that Jing Foshu just gave was very helpful. If you want a list to focus on for our lives, 7 things, it's not too much, right? Being filial to our parents, caring about them. Sometimes they don't meet our expectations as parents, but if we're able to see them as human beings, trying their best, they make mistakes, but they oftentimes have done a tremendous amount of care for us, to take care of us, that if we can be respectful and at least not harmful as a starting point, it's pretty good, right? Second, being respectful to our elders. Right? This is how we learn. It's sometimes fashionable now to kind of disrespect our elders and be rebellious, kind of to innovate, right? Go our own way. But in that way we sometimes we lose touch with our roots. It's not to mean that we're locked into rigid patterns of past behavior, but that in our growth and our development as human beings, we don't forget where we came from. All the people that supported us, the teachers, the elders, all of that, we don't forget. Because if we forget, what happens is we actually feel deeply disconnected and lost. It's just like we don't have roots. Right? We just get blown around by the winds of culture, popular movements, whatever is most fashionable. We just get blown around, back and forth. But if we can tap and connect to our roots, then we have some foundation. Speech is very important. How do we speak with kindness and harmonious, wanting people to heal and not use our words to gossip and hurt and split and divide, right? How do we be generous with our time, with our resources, with our energy, right? There's ways to be generous. If we can be truthful. And this is tricky because being truthful requires, I would say, real skill. Because there are certain times that we need to be careful with what we say because it could be hurtful. But we don't want to because we're scared of somebody's disapproval that we end up lying. We end up saying things that are untrue. So here, I think it's really helpful to have some skill in communication, where we can speak the truth, but speak the truth with kindness. And so this is definitely one area we could explore that I think is extremely important in our lives. It's very, very practical because we spend so much time with other people. And finally, anger, right? The anger really destroys things very fast. And so if we can live a life free of anger, we find that the environments that we live in are a lot safer, are a lot more harmonious. People seem to be willing to support us and give us good feedback more easily. Because if we're angry, people are actually oftentimes scared of us, scared that we'll get angry. So being able to soften allows us to again naturally enter the flow of society, of relationships. So I'll translate that very briefly and then let Jingfo here continue. 所以这个故事呢，就是从我们现在的一些朋友是专门来布施，来怎么说 ？service 怎么说 ？service 是帮助人。
对，
帮助人。所以就听到一个故事，做善事。有个故事我觉得很有意思，是有两个这些，就是我们认识他们就去了一个走路在印度2800那个 kilometers， 然后走的时候就碰到一个人，我就讲简单一点，他发现这个人专门这个生命的工作是什么呢？就是帮助人在走这个路，他没有什么特别的，就是一般的人样子，住在一个很简单的一个茅棚一样的，就是一个小房间，很简单的。他怎么样？他就是做这个小 signs， 这个 sign 是什么
？sign 就是那个招牌吧？
招牌，对，就招牌，因为走这条路很长啊，对不对？很多地方在森林里面啊，不知道走哪一个方向啊，他就把这个招牌放上去，但这个走这个路的人，他们不会走迷了。然后这些很多地方也没有水，他会去坑水啊，然后把一些水炉啊就放在路的旁边，但是他们走路的人呢，他们就可以有水来喝。那这就是这个人的工作，他自己就这样子发心。我听了很感动，因为说真的，我是美国长大，很多时候我们就是看的是从外表来看，说你多成功，赚多少钱啊，有多少地位啊，等等等等。但是如果我们真正从这个佛法的道理来看，真正的富贵，刚刚我们说这个富贵的家里，这个对不对？是看看我们的家真的是有这个布施的心，这个善良的心，这个愿意做善事的心。我们有更多钱啊，更多地位，如果我们没有这些善良的心，很多时候我们的生命还是一个像地狱一样，对不对？不是很服务，有这个服务就是专门来服务大家。所以我觉得这个从学佛法我们可以找到一个道理，就是说我们社会上给我们一些基本的方向，我们需要赚一些钱，够生活就够了，对不对？不用赚很多钱，够了就够了。然后我们可以把我们的时间呢，来服务大众，帮助大众，但是我们的生命就真的有意义。刚刚进佛就讲这个七个东西，我就不用再讲了。但是像这个7个东西是非常好的一个东西，我们可以来观想自己，我们有没有孝顺父母啊，尊敬师长啊，讲话是不是调和啊， 没有讲是非啊，这个很真实啊，不发脾气啊，对这些的善好的这个个性，可以这样说吗？Sorry, my Chinese is 我的中文是 OK， 不知道听不听得懂。好，就这样子讲。
OK， 好，像天传师讲的这个，在美国社会来讲，功利主义啦，讲起来就是功利。
功利什么东西？
功就是希望，他
功
能够，也不是功，一直都福报的事情啦，利益自己的事情啦，这个是功利啦。美国社会，因为他要求生存就是这样子，但是在我们中国儒家的这个，他就是比较会考虑其他的方式，像刚才讲这个，有很多的这个故事，其实讲不完的。我们那个大家可以自己去反省，也很好。刚才讲了7种，这个是佛陀煮出来的7种，大家来反省是很好的。
So in America, Jifosha was saying, there's a lot of emphasis on kind of making money, kind of independence, kind of taking care of yourself, kind of making it, and kind of the more, well, somebody said utilitarianism. Interesting, utilitarianism. Yeah, we definitely that's a major principle in our society. We think about wanting to maximize happiness, and sad to say, we sometimes equate happiness with how much money we have. Not a very good marker, but somehow that's often become the marker. And then in other, maybe say wisdom texts, especially say Confucianism, it doesn't quite look at the world that way. About how does this benefit me? There's many other considerations. I mean, I would say one thing, however, is that we don't want to say, kind of make it seem like America is bad. I would say that there's definitely also lots of wholesome virtues within the American society. For instance, there is a virtue, I think, on self-reliance, on being able to, in an independence in a wholesome way, where we don't get entangled in certain, for instance, on one level, parents and children. Parents actually oftentimes do want their children to live their own lives and not feel like they have to control them their whole life. That's, I think, actually a very wholesome principle. Or if it gets too extreme, where the parents and children completely separate and they no longer care for each other, then that's not good. Then there's also a lot of a volunteering kind of spirit in America as well, as people volunteer their time. So it's not to say that America is somehow unvirtuous or something. However, the kind of more capitalistic, materialistic perspective is quite strong. It's quite strong. 所以不要想像美国好像很不好一样子，是也有好的地方，比方说这个要自己照顾自己，有一点这样子的，不是说我们完全独立，这是可能太极端了，但是至少我们要可以自己照顾自己，对不对？我也看到父母很多时候，他们会让孩子自己走自己的生活的方向，不用控制孩子很多，所以这个是一个好的一个地方，但不要到一个很极端的地方，就是好像各走各的，互相不照顾。另外呢，也有很多人会义工，在美国很多人也是义工来帮助人，所以这也是一个好的好处。但是很多时候我们社会上就讲的变成很物质上的一个方向来看，但是我想这个现在是个世界的问题，不只是美国。我看中国啊，跟别的国家 也有这样子一个困难，就是把钱当成主要的一个方式来快乐。Can you say that？ 这样子讲吗？ That somehow you measure your happiness by how much money you have, and it's definitely an imperfect equation. Yeah.
好，好，其实呢，我们学习佛法就是要来效法佛陀精神，或者是到最后成佛，然后这个在仙公上人他也有开示过，现在还是算元月份过年的时候，他曾经开示过，这个我们都是要讲富贵，或者是求福求富福田这些他说我们一个人能够做到心直念邪真富贵，失意断尽呢真福田这个就是我们在求富贵求福田的这个方式我们要把心来修心，来把这个我们的贪念把它止掉，这样子才是真的富贵。那能够断治自己的私欲自己的贪心这些，然后不去生气这些呢，还有的假借佛法这些，能够把它全部来做好这些，能够断尽自己的私欲呢，这个才是真正的有福田的。所以这个是上年给我们的一个过年的这个一个开示了。
给我看一下。Jing Fosher has a verse by Master Hua for the new year. He's saying during the new year, right now we're still, you could say, starting our new year, the Lunar New Year, and people want to have, good luck, blessings, success in their business, right? Oftentimes, when people come to the monastery during the Lunar New Year is to pray for good health and oftentimes money. 你常常就有钱恭喜发财 is what people say. The way that you greet each other during New Year is, I hope you get rich, right? So you can see money is very much on people's minds. But then Master Hua tries to bring it to principle, and he says, 心正念心直直 So if your mind is straight, if your heart is straight, this is true blessings and nobility. If our mind is straight. And if our 私欲迷中私欲断尽if we can let go of our selfish desires, our selfish desires, this is true blessings. So this is first one is if your mind is straight, that's true nobility. And if we can let go of our desires, our selfish desires, and that's true blessings.
这个止是止静，要静下来。
静this 止 is not straight. It's to be still, to be quiet.
Yeah.
To kind of
这个是非常给我们的一个开示就是说我们修道人就是你在求什么，对不对？就是你求富贵，求福田这些东西的。还有呢。另外一个
我讲一句关于这个 I think actually this is now that I understand what it means, I think it's actually very profound. Because if you actually look at it in terms of nobility, rather than seeing nobility as kind of status or being an official and so forth, if you can see status as having the inner stillness and patience to deal with whatever arises without reacting, that's true kind of nobility. Or if you look at the people in our lives that we deeply respect, oftentimes it's those people who can shoulder a lot of difficulty kind of effortlessly. And they're able to do that, I think, is because their heart and their mind is very, very still. If you look at those who are, look at myself, if my mind is very, very active, restless, kind of jumping around here and there, it's very hard for me to actually do anything. You give me some things to do and I quickly feel overwhelmed. I become frantic, right? The mind is unstable. And so true nobility comes from that profound stillness. So I think that's actually a really good principle. So if we really want to be reborn in a noble family, as talks about here, is we want to actually cultivate real patience in our heart. And then the second one about having blessings, I think it's quite interesting because we often think of blessings as kind of material comfort. And on one level it is, right? People who have extreme material comfort we say that have a lot of blessings. I don't know who's the richest person in the world right now. You have people like, Jeff Bezos, I think is the head of Amazon, or the Bill Gates. I know in the past, I don't know if he's currently the most wealthy person in the world, and there's many other wealthy people, and perhaps live in very luxurious conditions. Perhaps, I don't know, depending on the person's way they set up their lives. But it's possible that you can be surrounded by luxury, but be very discontent. You want more, you want more, you want more comfort. You're scared of any discomfort, right? And so that's actually pretty sad when that happens, is that when we find ourselves getting more and more comfortable in our environment to a point that we become dependent on things needing to be a certain way for us to be okay. And this is something we actually have to train ourselves in, because it's very easy to slip, to kind of go along with our habits and just want to be more and more comfortable, right? Everything's making us more and more comfortable. And what that does is then we end up becoming enslaved to our desires. And that's not real freedom. And here saying that's not real wealth. That's not real contentment. If that's the way we relate to the material world, then we're not actually really that happy oftentimes. We're oftentimes scared that we're going to lose our stuff. And it's like, okay, we become slave to the things rather than using the things skillfully. And so if we can let go of selfish desire, be actually really content with what we have, then even if we have just a little bit of things, we're very happy. And then that's true wealth. So if you can imagine us here being reborn in a noble family, imagine ourselves being reborn in a family that is patient, and a family that lives a simple life, happily. Would you prefer that kind of family versus a very wealthy family that is always forcing you to succeed because it needs to maintain its kind of identity of success, right? Or you're in a family that's constantly agitated, with everyone being angry at each other, but very high status, right? What kind of family would you want to be reborn in? 我觉得中文可能讲太多，但是我刚刚就是进佛就讲了，我想讲得很好，就是真正的富贵是在我们的心的平静跟我们的心的满足，不只是在我们有什么地位跟多少东西。
好，这个关于有
人问题啊，你看到可以。
他是说这个法师他开始在学习念佛了啦，那他也害怕说他不想那么早死的，他还年轻啦，然后他是说年纪大一点再往生，这样子可不可以？当然，是可以啊，你不是念佛你就马上就可以往生了，不是这样子。念佛的意思就是你念佛，你心里会得到佛的清净，清净的话，你做什么事情都会如意，都会满你的意，这样子的一个 所以不是说你念佛就会死了，不是这样子啦。然后那个念佛最重要，也不是说我们念佛才得到这个往生以后才得到利益。其实我们现生啊，我们现在的就可以得到利益，跟念南无观世音菩萨都是一样，跟念大悲咒这个都一样的。跟读经典什么东西都是一样，都是你会得到这个清净心，这个最重要。因为你清净心就没有烦恼，没有烦恼的话，你就做什么事情都顺利。
So somebody asked a question, Dharma Masters, I'm just starting to learn the Dharma, and I'm reciting the Buddha's name, but I'm not sure, I don't want to die so soon. I'm a young person, and so I want to die maybe a little bit later. Is that okay? Jing Forsher's response is, when you recite the Buddha's name, it doesn't mean that you're going to die immediately. It's to say that you're planting blessing, you're doing goodness that will have its results in a kind of a good rebirth. But even then, you actually, in the present, benefit a great deal as well. This is the same thing as reciting Guanyin Bodhisattva's name, or reciting the sutras, or reciting the Great Compassion Mantra. What happens when we recite the Dharma is that we develop a pure heart. And this, what is a pure heart? Is a heart that's free from afflictions. It's free from worries and attachments. And so then we can be really, really happy. So this is why we can recite. So it's not to say that when we recite the Buddha's name, we're going to die sooner. It's to say that when we recite the Buddha's name, we can make our hearts peaceful and pure. And when the time comes for us to go, we can also, that heart of peace, pure and happiness can go to a good rebirth. I may also say, however, it's not for sure that how long we will live. So it's not for sure reciting the Buddha's name is not the cause of death. Buddha was pretty clear that why do we die is because we get born, we become born in samsara, and so death is actually just a part of life. But the Amitabha practice gives us a way so that we can face death skillfully. Say it that way. 所以我们说真的，我们都会往生的。这个死亡不是因为我们念佛就死亡，因为我们在这个娑婆世界出生，就我们要面对死亡，所以生死就是我们来生死。所以念佛不是说我们会死，反而是说我们可以有个好的方法来面对生死这个问题，让我们可以真正超度吗？可以这样说吗？To
了生脱死，
对
，OK。所以我们的这个经典，回到经典，这个身处尊贵啊，所以身处尊贵，刚才我们也讲了，好像你当国王啊、皇帝啊、大臣啊这些啊，地势我们已经讲过了，佛陀跟仙公上人都讲过了。你像这个当这个皇帝的，我们有一个非常好的例子，就是那个清朝的顺治皇帝，他都不要当皇帝，他都把皇帝最后他去出家去了，为了就是要能够了生脱死，所以他做了这个诗啊，希望大家能够去研究这个甚至皇帝的这个诗，非常对我们修行是非常重要的。
So we talk about being born in a noble family. So for instance, you can be born as a king or an official. So there's a very good story that there was a Qing dynasty, a king or an emperor named Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu.
And he was an emperor that actually decided to leave home to become a monastic. And he wrote a poem about it. So he wanted to end birth and death.
我想这个诗我念了几条给大家。第一个，它也是讲，荣华犹如三更梦，荣华富贵啊哈。它后面就是讲富贵，富贵还同九叶霜，荣华犹如三更梦。这个意思就是说你你得到很多的这个光荣的事情啊，或者是很华丽的事情啊，就都是像这个三更梦一样，就是像做梦一样的。然后富贵呢，你所得到的富贵，还同九叶霜，就是像九叶的这个霜下来了以后，马上就消失了。所以富贵也是很快的，就在你的人生中，荣华富贵都是跟梦跟霜一样的，很快的就过去了。
Great, I got it. I was trying to find it because Reverend Sher actually translated this poem.
Yeah, 司法师也
And
讲
so
过
I
这个
was looking for his translation. This is power of modern technology. 所以你讲这是哪一个？你讲这个？
这是应该是第一个啊。
这个天下。
这个前面还有一句啊，前面就是。
Let me read because the poem is so beautiful. Let me read the English.
还没有，我还没讲到第二句。第二句他是讲这个司法是才讲的第二句。天下丛林万事山，钵盂到处任金餐，黄金白玉非为贵，唯有袈裟披艰难。根本大地山河足，忧国忧民事转凡。这个司法是有提到这个。
对，
就这几句。
So I can read. So this is a poem praising the Sangha from 顺治 Qing Dynasty Emperor 顺治。刚开始也有个第一句啊。
第一句有，他没有
翻译啊。
不是，他没有翻出来。
So
这个第一句有。
就是说，
荣华犹如三更梦，就是荣华富贵嘛。
So all the kind of
非常的
luxuries and the kind of comforts, they're all just like a dream, right?
也三更梦一样的。
三更梦。
然后你富贵啊，你很多钱啊，很富有啊。就是好像九叶的霜就是掉下来以后，马上就融掉了。
All your riches and wealth and status is just like passing phenomenon, like the
都不实在的，马上就化掉了。
The frost that just kind of disappears in the sunlight, you could say, and during the September months.
后面就。
And so then here's the next lines. The offerings made to the monasteries everywhere pile up as high as a mountain. So monks with alms bowls can receive food as they please. So he's comparing that, in the palace ends up being kind of an empty shell, right? It looks good on the outside, but inside there's not much. Well, he's looking and saying, wow, look at the monasteries where they receive offerings and can live a life of real freedom. 好，就这样子念啊。Okay. He says, gold and jade, in fact, are not the most precious of items, right? The jewels that we look to, money, is in fact not the most precious. He says, rather, the Kashaya robe, the monk's precept robe, alone is the rarest garment one can wear. So, the most beautiful clothes you can wear, the emperor's robes, that's not where it's at. The monk's robes, but we're a little bit biased. We're wearing monk's robes. I, the emperor, am lord of China with its mountains and rivers.
他是皇帝嘛，所以他是大地山河主。
So as the emperor, imagine in China, right? You have a lot of power and a lot of status. I worry over the nation. I'm concerned for its people. I'm always distressed. He talks about his life as an emperor, constant worries. And then 就跟别人不念。
后面不要，因为他出家嘛，他最后出家了。
At the end, he left home.
Yeah, 所以这个就是说，荣华富贵，其实他看破了，看破就出家。出家最重要就是要能够他能够得到解脱，能够以后得到成佛的这个是最重要的。另外，我想，我们再来讲一个富贵，富贵的，其实富贵并不是怎么样子不好。你知道善财童子啊？为什么叫做善财？他就是非常有钱的一个童子，而且这个是善呢，是非常好的。他拥有这个善的这个财富呢，而且这个他生出来的时候，他的七宝呢从地上涌出来。
So, you can look up that poem for yourself. It's a very inspiring poem. I'll say that shows that he saw through the material kind of wealth, and he decided to leave home and cultivate. And so, what's most important as we cultivate is to really become liberated, to realize Buddhahood. But it's not to say that wealth is bad. It's not, for instance, in our Avatamsaka Sutra, there's the Sudana, whose name is actually good wealth. And so when he was born, many treasures disappeared. They say the 7 treasures just manifested from the earth. So he was somebody who was blessed with a great deal of wealth.
好了吗？哈，Yeah， 所以这个三代童子仙公上人他在这个里面也有1987年也有开示过，他这个童子呢，就是他就是童真入道，就是说他没有经过结婚，他就开始来学习佛法，所以他的身体没有污染，然后他在冬天天竺府城的时候，他天竺是一个印度的天竺国那里的府城的一个地方呢，他是一个富德长者之子，他的城中富德长者之子，所以他是一个很德高望重而且很富有的长者的这个的一个孩子。他在那里的时候，他听文殊师利菩萨呢，在府城就是一个地名的地方呢，东大塔寺里面来说法。三代童子呢，他也是那时候他就率了500位童子来参加法会。
So a little bit of the background of Sudana. Master Hua in a lecture in 1987 explained that Sudana, who was a youth, a young man, you could say that he entered the way in a kind of his pure youth. Sometimes we talk about bringing brahmacharya, a kind of a life of purity, and often kind of referencing celibacy, a kind of where one uses one's energies rather than kind of one way, you use that energy for the spiritual path. And so he was very pure. And he was in India, in a city where he grew up in a good family, kind of a wealthy, noble family. And there he was able to learn from Manjushri Bodhisattva and at some Dharma gathering. And in that Dharma gathering, he brought 500 of his, say friends. He was kind of a leader of I don't know if it was gang, but his group of friends, right? He was a leader of that group, and so he brought 500. They all came together.
Yeah， 所以有钱的童子也是很好啊，就是说能够教导大家一起参加法会，学习佛法，这个就是像我们大家一起来听法现在一样的。然后这个文殊师利菩萨呢，知道他是法门的龙象，所以他是特别跟他开示，叫他去南方去参访名师， 所以就有三才童子53参的这个故事，所以这个故事也是非常给我们学习的，因为他参访了每一位这个名师呢，要经过一个100个城市，千辛万苦这样子登山涉水来不辞辛苦的来求佛法，求这个最后能够开悟，能够证到这个法门。所以他最后普贤菩萨就跟他讲了这个10大愿望，最后也是他证入了不可思议的解脱境界，所以这个最后也是导归极乐世界。所以这个是一个三才童子他都非常有钱，也不是说不好，他能够拿来用在佛法上，这样子才是正确的。
So having wealth isn't a bad thing in itself. You can use it to help people and also to support the Dharma. So, for instance, the youth Good Wealth, Sudana, he led these 500 young men to learn the Dharma from Manjushri Bodhisattva. And when Manjushri Bodhisattva saw Sudana, he realized that Sudana was you could say a pure Dharma vessel, a way that someone who really could cultivate. And so Manjushri Bodhisattva taught Sudana and told him to go find good teachers to the south. And so this is how we have the stories of the 53 good and wise teachers of Sudana, where he goes from teacher to learn. And we can learn with him, seeing his journey. And he traveled vast distances, across India, in that time. He studied the Dharma for a long time, going through many difficulties, but he applied himself, didn't give up, and finally realized awakening. And Samantabhadra Bodhisattva at the end teaches him the 10 vows and practices of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. And he was able to realize the inconceivable liberation kind of realization, right? And at the very end of the text, it talks about being reborn in the Pure Land. Yeah. So maybe the final point what Jing Fosher is making is not to say that wealth is bad. It's just how do we use it? If we can use it for the Dharma, for liberation, for goodness, then that's really good.
就是说你种善根就得善报嘛，这个是一定的。我们佛教的这个其实不只是佛教，所有的教都是一样，因果定律。所以这个在宋朝我在讲一个这个故事，也是印光大师说故事里面的我的一篇这个宋朝的范文正公的这个故事。这个范文正公就是范仲淹，宋朝人。
So if we do good deeds, we plant good seeds, we'll get good results, good fruits. There's a principle of cause and effect here that's very important within the Buddha Dharma. This is not just taught in the Dharma, it's also taught in many different religions and teachings that there's causation that happens. So here's another story that's from the Song dynasty with Great Master Yingguang, and it's a story that Great Master Yingguang tells about a person. 他名字叫范文啊。
范就是他的 last name
Fan. His name is Fan.
Mr. Fan.
范文正 is his name.
范文正公他这个就是范仲淹我们中国历史很有名的范仲淹
我中文历史没有历史。
范仲淹
他 very famous guy. 范仲淹 is very famous.
他家里的人呢，他做人非常的公正。他看人他都是好像都是看到自己一样的这个的一个慈悲心，然后呢，他看所有的书好像亲人一样，就是说不认识的人也是看为自己亲人一样的。 他视天下为一家，就是看所有的人都是自己的一家人一样，表示他心怀也非常的宽大，非常的慈悲心这样子。
So this person's named Fan Zongyan, and he was somebody who was very big-hearted, very upright, and so he treated everyone like family, you could say. Treated everyone very respectfully. So he's very famous, I think, for his virtue.
所以就是说，他从宋朝到明末，就是说到这个印光大师的明末这里的时候呢，你看足足有1000年呢，他的子子孙孙呢，他种到的这个科甲，就是说他种的这个做官啦，种什么状元这一些呢东西呢，都是每一个1000年下来，子孙都是非常发达、非常有名的，也这样子的一个算范仲淹他自己做的这个留下来一个很好的一个典范。
他的下一代都很好。
对呀，1000年下来，每一代都是非常好的。
一千年了。
1000年了，宋朝到现在1000年了。
So for 1,000 years, from the Song dynasty all the way to the Ming dynasty, in each generation each generation was actually very virtuous and good and caring, and so it was quite inspiring to see somebody who left such a legacy that lasted so long.
还有他又讲了一个，就是在常州，就是苏州的那里的地方，叫做常州，有一个姓彭的，彭氏，他也是一直在力行善事，就是说他在来做善事，非常认真，所以他从明朝初年以来呢，他们的这个科甲冠以天下，就是说他的小孩子呢，这一些得到这个官府的这个科甲，像状元呐这一些的，他的家里面呢，状元就有45个人，他的家里就有45个人，而且同胞兄弟呢，都是山顶甲者，都是非常有名的这个兄弟，这样子，而且呢，最珍贵的是，他世世都是来学佛教，而且他也奉这个来学习印度文，就是还有感应篇这一些，他们的这个就是来专门来利益别人，来这样子来得到这个天给他的一个很厚的这个厚报，然后能够长存下来，所以这个也是非常有名，而且当印光大师也把这个事情特别提出来。
So there's another very famous person named Peng Shi, who did many good deeds, and so in his family line, he had actually 45 zhuangyuan, which I don't know would be translated what exactly in English. It's the kind of like top scholar, but if people know in China, you take these entrance exams, these kind of exams that are widely distributed, and everyone takes them. And depending on your score, it kind of ranks you in society, you could say. And so zhuangyuan is basically the top score. So really the best. So I was thinking about, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of people maybe take this test. Maybe not all at once. So, but many people, right? If you imagine China, and you come out to you have the highest score. So in his one family, he had 45, and all his brothers were also very excellent. Were very well-to-do officials, But he himself was somebody who devoted himself to the Dharma, and he devoting himself to helping other people. So he was another very exemplary person in Chinese society.
对，好了哈。
Yeah.
还有一个因果报应里面呢，我们六道轮回，都是逃不了因果，所以仙公上人也讲了这个安世高的故事，大家也可以去查安世高的这个故事，这个也是非常值得我们来学习这个佛法的，了解这个安世高，他其实他也是一个国王的这个太子，所以我们跟这个我们的经典就是升贵。这个珍贵处嘛，珍贵宴嘛，所以他也是一个国王的这个太子，然后他这个发生在中国的汉朝末年，那汉朝啊，中国的汉朝，然后他有一个叫做安息国，就是现在的伊朗啊，安息国的地方，有一个大的名字叫做安清。他就是安世高，他的名字就是安世高。
So there's another teachings on the cause and effect within the 6 paths of samsara. There's a person named An Shi Gao who was very famous as well, and so he actually began as a prince in India and came to China during the end of the Han Dynasty, to a place of Anshi. He had a teacher named Anqing, I think. 他老师叫安清啊，是出家众对不对？
对，但后来他出家了。
Yeah, so he actually became a monk. So he was a prince who actually became a monk, I believe, in India, and learned a Dharma under a teacher named Anqing. They say Dharma Master Anqing, and so he was very, very famous, An Shi Gao.
因为他本来他是人家叫他继承王位，但是他放弃王位，他就给他叔叔叫他当王位，然后他就出家去了，所以他就去出家去当比丘去。
So he could have become the king, but he didn't want to, and so he actually gave up the position to his uncle. And he went and left home and became a monk.
他这个后来他安世高，从那个安息国那里，他就来到中国广州的地方，他要来还他以前这个所受的命，就是他以前前生的这个债命啊，就是说，他以前有杀过人，他要还这个命给人家。
So he came from Anshi Guo, the country of Anshi, to China's Guangzhou, and he knew that he had a past life debt to repay. He actually killed somebody, so he had to go there to repay his debt.
所以他去到了这个广州以后呢，他就遇到一个年轻人，他这个年轻人看到安世高呢，他就不问什么事情呢？不问情有理由呢，就要杀死这个安世高。
So so when An Shi Gao went to China, Guangzhou, he met a young person, and this young person, seeing him, without any provocation or anything, just saw him, had a very negative reaction and wanted to kill him.
所以他就问这个年轻人啊。他说：“你为什么要杀我？”年轻人跟他说：“我也不知道，但是我看到你，我就不高兴，我一定要杀死你。”
So the An Shi Gao asked this young person, "Why do you want to kill me?" The young person says, "I have no idea, but I look at you and I just want to kill you."
所以这个安世高就对这个年轻人跟他讲啊：“我以前这个前世的时候呢。”我因为曾经杀过你，所以你今生就要来杀我，所以我今天就来到这里，我就是 我要反偿我这个命债的，所以他就毫不害怕的就把头伸出来，然后就给这个年轻人宰割，就给他杀就对了。
So Anshigao said, that's because in the past life I killed you, and so that's why you hate me and want to kill me. And so I came this time here because I want to repay that debt. And so he stuck out his head so that the young person could actually, slice off his head. And so this young person actually sliced off his head, beheaded him. 就杀他了，对不对？
就把他杀死了。所以安世高呢，他的神识呢，又到这个安息国王宫去投胎成为太子。
So Anshigao died and went and got reborn back in the palace of Anshi, the country of Anshi, back to again being a prince.
其实安世高的故事还很多很多，大家可以做功课去看一下安世高的故事。仙公上人他所讲的，所以就是说我们要知道前世因呢，是我们今生受的事。要知道来世果呢，就是我们今生所做的事，所做的就是来世的果。所以大家我们学习佛法要注意因果，这个最重要的。
So the story goes on. So I would recommend people can do your own homework and read this story about Anshigao. It's a very interesting story, and it says that. I see people helping with the translation. He actually came from Persia. And so his story is an example of how our lives are influenced by our past karma. And where we are now comes from the past karmic conditions. And where we're going to go depends on what we're doing now. So in this story, I believe Anshigao actually gets killed, I think, a couple of times, and has some very interesting stories where he even teaches the people that kills him because they're, shocked that somebody was saying, go ahead and kill me. I owe you my life, right? But in that process, he teaches the Dharma, and he himself, I believe, wakes up. So it's a kind of an interesting story where you think, gosh, on the surface, it could seem like a tragedy, but from another perspective is actually, if you're not, you could say, if you see there's more than just life and death, then you could see that he's heroically walking in the spiritual path, right? Going very, very deep. 所以我想这个故事最后，我想金佛就可以纠正我，但我所记得是，他甚至都教那个人杀他的人佛法。对不对？他告诉他们你要杀我啊，因为我这样子做，所以他们跟他杀了人也学到佛法，然后最后他把他的债还了，最后有开悟，对不对？安世高。
后面有开悟啊，我不知道，好像他因为这个中间还有去度他的另外一个同事，那个开悟那个是度那个大蟒蛇的。
不是安世高，
安世高对，安世高去度他的大蟒蛇的这个他的同事啊，非常的这个很容易生气啦，就是脾气很大。
对，
他后来就转身为大蟒蛇，在一个湖里面去当大蟒蛇，然后在那里庙里面啊，所以这个又有非常的精彩故事。他去度了这个，后来这个。也就后来他这个蟒蛇就往生了，就开悟了。然后其实他度杀这个人啊，还有一个故事，叫他说他4年以后你再把我给他那个安世高给他一个箱子，给那个杀的人啊，杀他的人啊，年轻人啊，他说你4年以后再打开来。他打开的时候有8个字，8个，自己去看这个故事。
You can go read these stories yourself. Anshigao has many amazing stories. I was asking Jing Forsher, did he actually wake up? Not sure in terms of if he had a kind of a awakening experience, but clearly he was quite cultivated, and he saved one of his Dharma friends from past lives who really got angry a lot and ended up as a big kind of sea monster. And so I think if you want to learn these stories, you can go look it up yourself. And it's just, to me, it's an interesting way to have a bigger perspective on life. Because sometimes we're just trapped in our very kind of narrow vision of one life way of looking at things. Okay, 那我们会向回向功德了吧？So now we'll do dedication of merit.
我想我们要发布一个消息，就是我们奥克兰的赵妈妈在5天前往生了，她100多岁了，这个是非常难得，她是非常念佛精进，她整个家人啊都是念佛。我们 BBM 以前每个月的礼拜六呢，我们会一次去他家里念佛，去他家里我们都大家念得非常的高兴，他也很高兴，家人都高兴，所以念佛是最高兴，所以我们这2天我们会跟石法师来开会，我们会选1天，我们也来这边跟他做一个告别往生莲位的仪式，所以我们会再跟大家宣布正确的日期。
So we also want to let people know that 5 days ago, a member of our community, we call her Zhao Mama, which means Mother Zhao. She's our elder Zhao. She's a laywoman, very sincere, who just passed away at 100 plus years of age. So a real elder. And she was somebody who devoted herself to Amitabha recitation practice, very vigorous, and inspired her whole family to recite the Buddha's name. And at BBM, we would go to her place, kind of the elder's home, once a month on a Saturday. And actually, it was kind of an elder home Buddha recitation session. Many elders would come together. We'd all recite the Buddha's name together, and there'd be a lot of joy and happiness. And yeah, we went there for 20 years. Wow. For 20 years. And the family, everyone recite, everyone was very happy. And so what we plan to do is a memorial service for her. And we'll talk with Reverend Sher and figure out the date when we can do it and let people know, so you can stay posted. But I know she was somebody who was a major part of the community, a very inspiring elder who focused on cultivation.
Yeah.
How? Let's do our dedication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. So that concludes our evening lecture. Hope you can join us next week, same time, same channel.
Yeah.
所以下个礼拜我们还会再继续讲阿弥陀佛的48大愿。44愿 ，Number 44.
Yeah. Okay. 阿弥陀佛。
阿弥陀佛。Wish you
大家晚安。
a good week, full of blessings. Remember what true blessings are, and what true nobility is. Stillness, and second one was contentment, no selfish desires. 好，没有问题了。OK， 阿弥陀佛。